name is Alana Dillon. I'm an Education and Support Services Coordinator at Parkinson Society BC. Welcome to our Care Partner series, part 1, featuring our panel talk, our caregiving stories. You'll see on the screen our 3 panel participants and the panel moderator. Before I introduce all of them, I will go over a few housekeeping items with you first. So I wanted to let you know that we are recording this panel discussion, so it will be available on our website if you would like to see the recording or if you happen to miss the session. And secondly, you will see a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that icon to open it up, you can use that chat box to type any comments or questions that you have for the panel speakers. And finally, to optimize your experience with this webinar, please ensure that you adjust your speaker volume, both on your computer as well as on your actual speaker, so that you hear the webinar well. It is my pleasure to now introduce our panel moderator and panel speakers. Madelaine Ross is Parkinson Society BC's clinical counselor and facilitator of the early to mid-stage Parkinson's Care Partner group and the advanced stages Parkinson's Care Partner support group as well. Today she will be moderating our panel session. And our panel speakers include Mark Hutchinson, who is a care partner. Mark is also on the Parkinson Society BC Board of Directors. And following Mark, we have Pat Mauch, who is recently a former care partner, and she is the facilitator of the Vancouver West Side Support Group. We then have Terry-Lynn Otto speaking from her perspective and experience in caregiving as a daughter to her father who is living with Parkinson's. Our panel of Parkinson's disease care partners, family caregivers, discusses what being a care partner caregiver means to them and how they have advocated for themselves in the role, the challenges and rewards of caregiving, as well as wisdom and acquired wisdom that is acquired through learned experience will be explored. I'd like to welcome all of you and thank you for sharing your personal caregiving stories today. I'll pass it over to Mark to start off the panel session, and Madelaine will take over the moderation of the panel from here. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Alana, for the warm welcome, and it is great to be with you this morning. A care partner, we talk about people with Parkinson's disease, and if you've seen one person with Parkinson's disease, you've seen one person with Parkinson's disease. That's exactly the same with being a care partner, because there's so much variety, there's so much difference. You know, you're going to hear such a variety and difference of understanding in different situations that we all find ourselves in as care partners. So as you are living with someone and being a care partner at the moment, yeah, your situation is unique. Your situation is where you are. So I'm going to share with you a little bit today about where I am and how I live with Angela, my wife, who has Parkinson's disease. She was first diagnosed with Parkinson's disease back in officially July of 2008. So she's lived with Parkinson's now for a long time. And I didn't know at the time, but she was diagnosed with what we use the term nowadays, young onset Parkinson's. She was active. She was an active grandmother at the time, a young grandmother at the time. But, you know, as the disease has progressed, so, you know, life has changed for us. And so when we went into this journey, to be truthful, I did not know what to expect or what it was going to be like. It's a bit like, in some respects, bringing up children. There's no blueprint, there's no book. You do this, you do this, you do this. Life is life. And I think the important thing is that Angela and I have embraced the whole journey together. And it has been, and it has and is a journey. At times, you know, I'll be honest with you, I find it frustrating. I'm a man, and I don't know if it's a man thing or not, but, you know, at times I just want to fix this Parkinson's situation, and I can't. That is tough for me sometimes to work through. to accept that I just can't fix it, but I do the best I can. And one thing is that I love my wife dearly, and I'm there to care for her. Another high level thing I would share is that as you get into it, as in your journey as a care partner and a caregiver, don't try to fix, whether you're a man or a lady. Don't try to fix. Be there to support. Be there to encourage. We're there to help the loved one that we care for and care with to live with this disease. We're there not to implement and say, "Oh, I'll do that instead of you." No, we're there to support, and I think that's a key thing I would share with people as we go through this journey. Be there to support, to encourage, but not to take over or take away from. Because just because they have Parkinson's doesn't mean to say they can't do things. And that's something I live with and I work with myself. Another thing I would say, as well as you journey, as you get into being a care partner and as you journey with this, is never put something off. If you can do something today, do it today. If you, like Angela and I, love to travel. We don't know how long Angela will be able to continue to travel like we do at the moment. So let's do as much as we can. I've been fortunate. I took what I suppose you call early retirement. So I have more time on my hands now. And so we do travel. And in this next week, we're going to the UK to visit family in the UK. We're later in the year, we're going on a cruise. Don't put things off. Do it, live for today, and enjoy the moment that you're in. Because none of us know, Parkinson Society, none of us know really what's around the corner. But in this disease, I've seen Angela has declined over the last 2 to 3 years. I've seen a marked decline in what she can do. She can still do most things, but it takes more time, takes more effort. She gets tired quicker. And one of the things I've seen recently as well is that, you know, Angela, Parkinson's is giving her quite a lot of pain. And so she's living with pain as well and working through pain. And so never put things off, live for today and do what you can while you can, because we just don't know what is around the corner there. And as a caregiver, another thing I would say to encourage you to do is do something that can help you. So yes, you're living with the person you're being a caregiver for, but do something for you that can give you, because I can't fix the Parkinson's that my Angela has, but one of the things I can do is do something. So one, I actively get involved with the Parkinson Society of British Columbia. I'm on the board of directors there, and I get involved. My whole life has been about speaking and encouraging and motivating, and so do what I can there. And so I try to advocate for not just Angela, but for all people with Parkinson's disease. Angela's been on a wait list now for over 3 years to have a deep brain stimulation, DBS. It's a long haul here in BC. And I find that frustrating, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit trail too much there now, but what I would say is that I do what I can to advocate for not just Angela, but for everybody that is on that journey of wanting and needing to receive DBS. So my key thing is get involved, do something, because that way, whilst we can't fix the situation, what we can do is we've got a purpose. We've got something that we're doing and that we're encouraging other people, and we've got something that we're doing for ourselves as well as on that journey. So for me, you know, it is live for today and live for where you are and never put things off. You're in this together and live and encourage and support and build up. Remember though, don't take over and don't replace. Don't say, oh, I'll do that instead of you. Try to be there as the support. I say that in one sense, I say that easy, but I know it's not easy. It's not easy for me because I just want to care and I want to jump in, but try not to jump in and be there to support and not take over is a key factor. And remembering that, you know, our journey for Angela and I is unique. And we are in this together. And I go to all the appointments with Angela, whether it's from our local family doctor or the specialist. I'm there to support and encourage. and just because I live with Angela all the time, as we're talking to our movement disorder specialist out at UBC, I can share some insights that I see myself there. So we are in it together, and we are in it to support each other as we journey through this situation. It's not going to go away. It's only going to, well, in a sense, it's going to get worse for Angela as the disease progresses. But how can we mitigate that and work and support each other? So that's a little bit about me and where I come from. So I'll hand over back to Madelaine now and see if there's any points we want to take before we go to our next speaker. Madelaine, you're muted.
And you're muted.
You're still muted, Madelaine. Yeah.
Sorry, too many things on the sides of my screen.
That's all good.
I know. Yeah, I think that's a great summary, Mark, from you in terms of being really, really present, right?
Yes,
respecting
being present.
that sort of
yes.
autonomy of the person that's diagnosed. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, and that you're in it together, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a really important thing. We do have we do have one question for you. I think over on the side just before we go on to our next panelist.
Mm-hmm.
Asking about pain. Pain.
Sorry, say again.
Someone's asking about pain in Parkinson's. What causes the pain? Do you have any?
Well, I'm not a physician, so I can't really say what causes the pain. But what I see in Angela has, well, for example, a practical thing. She has had a problem with a rotator cuff injury there. But I think you've got a combination there of the part. She's got the spasm in and the move, and they're both conflicting against each other. So she has excruciating pain in her arm, and it's very debilitating. At times, she even struggles to wash her hands due to the pain. It's not there all the time, but so she has the pain. She has the pain most of the time, but it's exasperated periodically, and I've seen that get worse with her over the last 6 months or so.
Thank you, Mark, for clarifying that. So I have another question. Just before, again, we'll maybe come back to some of these. When it comes to autonomy and not taking over, things like driving come up. Is your partner still driving?
Yes, she is still driving. She drives not as much, but again, one of the key things that we've talked about is to make sure she has her independence. So she drives little. We live in Chilliwack, and the furthest that she would drive would really be to Abbotsford. Because we're very fortunate, our vehicle has got adaptive cruise control, and so that's easier for her. So again, we tried to make sure we've got things that can help her with that situation. But as anyone would know, with the jerky movements, that is a concern. And Angela has a medical every 2 years where we see our family doctor to approve her to continue to drive. So yes, she's driving, but with limited distance. Yeah.
Right. So it's a great example of sort of doing things together, right? And sort of figuring sort of that step and sort of evaluating as you go along. Thanks, Mark. That's really wonderful. Our next panelist, I think, as we move on, is Pat Mauch, who's been a facilitator with Parkinson's Society BC support groups for a long time.
Yes, and there's a reason for that too.
Okay, well, I'll let you go on. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for joining us today.
Basically, a lot of the things Mark said, I'm going to repeat, which is going to be interesting. So it's certainly validating a lot of that. My husband, George, had Parkinson's for 25 years. We've been married 54. We were married 54. And so that was really half of our marriage. And we didn't even think about that, to be very honest. It just was. And we didn't really make that a big impact in our life, and it didn't until the last few years. I have a nurse background, but when I retired, it was more from working with teenagers and school kids and stuff. But, maybe that background sort of has something in there too. George died recently, from his Parkinson's disease after his body started to change too quickly, and to also have the Parkinson's dementia. So he could still walk, and I'll talk about exercise and why that, but other parts of his body just were not functioning very well at all. And it especially once that Parkinson's dementia started to sneak in there, there were a lot of unsafe decision-making, just different things like that. And at the time, in the last little while, the family, we all knew that was not the body he wanted to be in. It was not the situation he wanted to be in. So we had to honor some of that for him. On that comment of pain, before I forget about that, I remember going to a presentation once that the Parkinson Society had put on, and they did mention that people with Parkinson's feel pain differently. I don't know why or how, but I remember that sort of thing, because again, George experienced pain as well and couldn't really articulate sort of why it was that uncomfortable. When our whole attitude and our motto for everything was called postpone nothing. Postpone nothing. Do what you can, do it as long as you can and as much as you can. And we also like to travel. So that would be, you know, travels as much as we could. Sometimes it was down to Kids Beach to count how many tankers and barges were there. And sometimes it was to Egypt to travel down the Nile. So we did a lot of traveling, because that was sort of our passion. And we even got into somebody we met on a cruise in her book about our motto, postpone nothing. That managed to get in there. The other thing we did is exercise was a daily event. George had done tons of sun runs. He'd done previous half marathons, and he did a lot of those quite well into Parkinson's. And so exercise was an important part of our life. Socialization was our treat. So, you know, a lot of those things we put together when we ended up becoming the facilitators for the Parkinson's support group. We had exercise there every week to encourage people to do it. We tried to have as much socialization, teas, etc., as we could. And that worked really well until COVID, of course, came along, and that started to affect everything. So those were all the different things. One of the things was participating and volunteering. We learned a lot. We learned a lot. We met other people. We met other people who had Parkinson's who were doing well. We kept reinforcing and reinforcing that it doesn't take over your life, it becomes part of your life. Some people have asthma, and right now with all the spring happening and the cottonwood blowing around, they're suffering with their asthma. We just sort of walked through that, and we learned how to learn more, and we learned how to give back. So, but as George's life did change with this, especially as this Parkinson's dementia started to sneak in, I had to learn how to take on more of the responsibilities, financial decision-making, various things like that. And now in the situation where he has passed on, I'm glad I did learn all those things, because I know other people who have maybe a sudden death in their family and they are just overwhelmed. And I learned a lot. So there is an advantage to that as well. Some of the other things that was hard for me, why can't I change this? Why can't I fix it? Why can't I do this? I mean, it's not a male thing, it's a partner thing. When you're a team, the team thinks, okay, as a team, we should be able to do this. And we did, and we did, and we did. But then there was a certain point we couldn't. And Parkinson's did have a little bit stronger effect on the whole thing. So that was sort of a hard thing. The biggest challenge for me was watching George deteriorate to a place he didn't want to be and not being able to do anything about it. That was a biggest challenge for me. The hardest was at home. We had other resources coming in. We had different stuff. And the night care was the thing that sort of the case manager said, no, you can't keep doing this. So he did have to go into care because I couldn't keep doing that. And that made me feel pretty bad, but there wasn't many other options that were going to work for him. Some might work for me, but not for him. So that was a very big thing. It was a big loss for all of us in the family. It really is still a big loss. And we're trying to figure out how to be involved in still things with Parkinson's. I still go to the support group, you know, check in, see how people are doing, connect with people. I also have always had other volunteer out at the airport. I volunteer out at the airport, telling people how to find the washroom, those sort of important things in life, you know, but I have tried to keep other things going as well all the way through. I know that all the things we've done to try and manage Parkinson's are the positive memories, all those travels, all those trips, all those meetings with other people. Those are the things that are keeping me going. Those are the things that are keeping me going. Those are the memories that we celebrate. Those are the things I think about. I think about something somebody said when we were away somewhere doing something. And those memories are really what is helping me manage right now, because that's a difficult time. So I still say, postpone nothing, do all you can for as long as you can, and enjoy it. Take pictures, have pictures. You know, when we did George's obituary, one of my friends who in British friend who has a place in the Mediterranean, that's a picture of George. And when she saw that, she said, oh my goodness, that's my favorite restaurant. There's George, I love it. So, you know, those things are celebrate all you can. Okay, so I think that's postpone nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story, Pat. I like that. I like that. Don't postpone. That's a good thought, probably for all of us.
Yes, not just, yes, all of us.
All of us. Yeah. Thank you for sharing with us. Our next, I see we're getting a lot of questions. So I think what I'm going to do is actually hold questions to the very end, and then we can throw it out to the whole group. My next guest is Terry-Lynn, and her mother has Parkinson's. Did I get that right? Yes. If you'd like to share your journey, it would be great.
So I met Pat and Mark briefly last week, and when I heard their stories, I wondered, well, what could I possibly add to this conversation? Because I'm an adult child caregiver. My mom has Parkinsonism, and I don't have the breadth and the depth that Mark and Pat have. And I wrote out a really good thing I was going to say today. And now that I've heard them speak, I think I'm just going to wing it, and I'm going to be open and completely honest. And because a lot of the things that they've said, I heard in my mom and dad, and I've also experienced or been a part of, but in a different way in supporting. And so I wanted to show you guys this. This is my mom and I in Scotland. And my mom always wanted to go to Scotland. And we noticed some changes in what she wanted to do. She's a quilter, she's a walker, and all of a sudden she wasn't doing those things anymore. And then we noticed it wasn't that she didn't want to do them, she couldn't do them. She couldn't hold the rope, but she was adapting and doing a great job of it. We didn't know. And then all of a sudden we did know. And so Mom and I went to Scotland, and we had a super time, like you guys, postpone nothing, because she couldn't. You can see in the picture, she's in a wheelchair and holding a cane. And this is the first time that she had to use a mobility assistant in public. And so while we were having a great time and laughing a lot, there were also a lot of private tears. She was frustrated. She couldn't walk on slippery cobblestones. She could have walked on the sidewalk here, but not there. And so that became a part of our life, is the two sides of the coin, and they're always there. And so I think for me as an adult child caregiver, there are two big ideas that have saved my bacon and continue to kind of like evolve over time. And the first one is the idea of building a village and a team. Because I came suddenly into a position where I was the primary caregiver for my mom when my dad passed away. So before we had the diagnosis, before my dad passed, we had begun to build up this village and this team. And when my mom was diagnosed with Parkinsonism, I thought that was an interesting question about the pain, because for my mom, she had chronic abdominal pain for years, but everything looked normal and there was nothing wrong with her, et cetera, et cetera. And then once we got the diagnosis, it was like validation, and we didn't feel crazy anymore. And when we found out about Parkinsonism, I started Googling like crazy, and right in front of me was a resource, a part of the team, a village, and that was Parkinson Society. And I made a phone call, and a woman named Carolyn picked up the phone. And within 5 minutes, she made all these connections to my mom's history. She gave me resources for the present, for the future. And we started to develop this village and this community, and it was right there. And I'd still be Googling if I hadn't made that call. So I really want to say to adult caregivers, that's so important. And when I became the primary caregiver for my mom, I also had to take on, like Pat was saying, the legal financial responsibilities switched to now be mine. And so I met with a lawyer. And when I came out of meeting with the lawyer, I felt small and stupid and angry at the situation that I was now in. And I thought, wow, I am so far over my head. There is no way. I don't know how to do this. And then I realized, wait, I know what it feels like to be a part of a village, to be a part of a community, to have a team. This is not that. And so we pivoted. We just changed lawyers, and I can call her in the middle of the night, which I have been known to do. And it goes to her voicemail, and the next day she picks up the ball and runs with it. So as an adult caregiver, often I was frantic in my own head, and am often. But if I take a step back to know what it feels like to have that village, I just need to call the village. So that would be my number one thing. And the second thing I wanted to say was about joy. And just like Mark and Pat talked about joy, we have to find that. And so for me, trying to have my life and be the primary caregiver for my mom was really tricky to find joy. And my mom struggles with very negative thoughts. And so how do you redirect for joy? So I just want to give you one example. And that is, we started doing virtual challenges. My mom started not wanting to go to exercise. She was depressed, and she didn't want to be physically active. She didn't want to get out of her room. She didn't want to do anything. And we switched it up. And my mom's not a swimmer. So we decided we were all going to swim the English Channel. And we did. And my aunt's not a swimmer either. But my aunt showed up one day with my mom's very first bikini. My mom, we laughed so hard. And my mom then said, I want a bike at home that I can now use for my physical capabilities. And all of a sudden now she's exercising double of the rest of us, and she's going to get across the English Channel before the rest of us. And it just changed that. It blossomed, and the whole team, the whole village was excited about it. And so those are two really big ideas that have really helped me. I don't know what I would do without those two things, that a village and joy, finding it somehow. Or also, I was on the plane this last weekend. I got to visit my daughter, and this woman and I started talking about caregiving. And I said, well, what would you say is the greatest thing that you have learned? And she is an adult child caregiver. And she said, the greatest thing I learned is when I am ready, my teachers will come. And I love the way the village has come to me. The joy has come to me. I have to be active, but that is, I think that's so cool. So that's it. That's me.
Thanks, Terry-Lynn. That was great. I think, and it really brings home to me that each caregiving experience is different and unique. So as much as the relationship is between the parties, right? So, and it comes with unique challenges. And a parent-child might be a little different than a married couple. But I think communication is key. And I think you touched on one thing I think that both Mark and Pat talked about, was that motivation piece, motivating to joy. So it's kind of like, it takes more energy sometimes to get that going. And then when somebody's motivated, right, they're sort of in a better groove for as long as they can do that, right? So I like the English Channel bikini. That might be my favorite photograph ever.
No, and I'm pretty sure she'll be okay with me showing that.
Too late now.
No, she's fine. She liked it. We had a good time.
And I think it brings up that sort of, I think there's a difference too, a little bit from an adult parent with adult child of a parent relationship to a married couple, where it's much more equitable. And there's a change when it's a parent to child. So there's some role switching there that's happening that's a little bit different than maybe in a couple. But thank you for bringing that up. We have lots of adult children out there that are the primary person for their mom or dad. So it's a great story. And it's not always easy. That's the other thing. So having that, I like the idea of the village, right? And having sort of that support network, and whether it's you know, as Pat said, through that support groups and socialization, and that there's that key component that we all need to have sort of happy, successful lives, right? And Mark, certainly the advocacy piece, right? Which is you can't, at this point in time, we can't fix Parkinson's, but we can work towards that, right? We can advocate for things that we know help, and make sure that people have access to information, so they're, you know, they sort of can get a grounding, right? And sort of get information along their journey. That's really great. Thank you all for your stories. And we have quite a few questions here. Some of them are more succinct than others, but we'll try and get through them all. I think we have about 25 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to go through the questions one by one. If you can put your hand up and we'll go to the first panelist that wants to answer. Okay, feels like they have one. Sorry while I scroll through. Sorry, it's an uneven. I have a question from one care partner whose partner's still driving and is still driving safely, is the primary driver. I'm wondering if that's a wrong decision. First, I think there's no right decisions, right? There's safer decisions, but no absolute right and wrong.
Maybe I'll just jump in. I started touching on that earlier. I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer to that. I think you all know your own situation and what you're living through. I am the primary driver for us, but you know, at the end of the day, I look at Angela when she drives great, but I know it's a struggle. She has to try that much harder. She has to focus that much harder because her body's not as relaxed as I would be when I'm driving. So she's more, well, yeah, I use the word intense, but not in a negative way, but the body is more focused and she's working against the movement within her body as she drives. So it is harder work. And so as time goes by, you know, I think if the other person is the primary driver, I can see that being, you know, an extra challenge for you. And so maybe there will come a time when you do need to look at an adaptation. One of the things that Angela and I have talked about is that as time goes by, if Angela cannot drive, well, you know, we would sell the car and we would utilize a taxi or something on those terms to make sure that, because I think movement and getting about is so important with Parkinson's. The more you can keep yourself out and about there is important. So look at other alternatives, and there are alternatives around. We may not like them initially, but it's something that we all need to initially focus and deal with, and to make the best of life. That's how I would answer that question.
Great answer, Mark. Okay, and we'll go to our next participant. My husband's sister is 71 years old and single, lives on our communal acreage. In the last year, she has gone from hiking, gardening, and kayaking to being very slow walking, bradykinesia, and is unable to lift herself out of her chair. She resists us trying to get her a handicap parking pass, a lift chair, going to Parkinson Society physiotherapy. And her doctor tries to encourage her, but she won't agree to anything. We believe this to be apathy. She continuously asks us to do things for her instead. What do you do about apathy? Any takers? The big question, I know. I think if we go to sort of Terry-Lynn's, you know, response to that, to come up with sort of some challenges, it is really tough for people to go from like being super active to being stuck and sort of frozen in space. So if there are some things that might be challenging. Pat?
I think the biggest thing, an example I mentioned about going to Kids Beach to look at barges and tankers. That's not my interest, but that's something George liked. So I think the thing to deal with, the, you know, getting oot in a boot, you know, is just something that is of interest to that person. You know, those sort of things I think can help more with the apathy when it's about that person's interest. So that's just, you know, whatever that interest could be, you know, it can help.
I have a thought on that as well. And from my perspective as the adult child, and I often, like I say, that it's like being an overnight guest and you go to their house and everything's great. And then they tell you right before you go to bed that if you want to shower, you got to hit the tap 3 times exactly in the right spot. And then maybe you'll get some hot water, but you know, and then there's another thing, the fire alarm goes off at 2 a.m., but don't worry, just grab the broom with the red handle instead of the blue handle and it'll all work out. And the people who live there, this has happened over such a long period of time that they just adjust. And then if, like when I'm dropped into that situation, it seems so acute to me. And so I think that for me is the challenge. Like Mark was saying, I just want to go fix it. I just want them to get on with it and let's call it what it is and move forward. And that's their story. So it's for me partly how am I going to react to that? Like Pat said, how will I join alongside, or how will I step back and let them have their journey?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And there is no right or wrong answer. I think one of the things that I've learned in this is that with Parkinson's, it's important to encourage the person to have some movement. The less movement, the more you're going to see the Parkinson's take over the body of the individual. And so to go from very active to nothing is going to be tough. It's tough on the individual, tough on the body. But I would just, wherever possible, just try and encourage to do something, find some mutual interest. Like we had some great examples here from both Pat and Terry-Lynn. But I would say try and do everything you can to see at least some movement, because the more movement you've got, the better the individual will be. The better they're going to cope with living with Parkinson's, because the more static you are, then the worse it will become.
So true. Thanks, Mark and Terry. Okay, this one, I don't know that we have an actual answer for this, but how common is it for a person? It's from Linda. How common is it for a person with Parkinson's to need to use a wheelchair? I think it's probably one of those things that just varies. It just depends on the person and the time. So I think Terry-Lynn's example of your mom needed it doing cobblestones in traveling in Scotland. And I know some people that maybe use it if there's long lineups and they're overtired after a flight, but they may not need it all the time. So it just depends, I think, on the person. Pat?
I would say it's just a safety issue. If the person starts to be having falls, then something like a wheelchair will help support them when they start to feel uneasy. So it's very unique to that person's mobility and safety.
Great answer, Pat. So very, again, just very individual. Okay, I'm seeing some questions. They're more about Parkinson's itself, but I think I'm going to just skip down because we have so many to some that are more about care partners. Here's somebody asking about a parent with Parkinson's and struggling with anger. Maybe Terry, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Alana, who's an awesome A-Team Village person, has my email, and I would love to talk to you or email with you. I think it's Catherine, and be a part of your team. And so I want to be really respectful of my mom too, and provide dignity here. So, but I will say that I think I feel anger. And so I think it's a natural part of the grieving process too. So for my mom, all the changes that have happened, yeah, she's angry. And so I do have some strategies to deal with it. And one of them is because she can trigger me because she's my mom. And so when it happens, I have to realize that this is not about me. I have a sentence that I say, which is, when you talk to me like this, I need to leave. And then I have to leave. And that's so hard. But now we have an understanding about where my boundaries are too. And it's helped her with her boundaries because she was so distraught that, I do it too. It just starts coming out. And this just puts a stop to it, an immediate stop, and allows her to have her emotion and also respect that I can't do all that. I don't know. That's my first answer.
That's a good answer. I think also know that there's counseling available can be helpful if somebody's struggling to accept, like to figure out what's going on there. For some people, it is a very foreign feeling to feel angry about things. And it is oftentimes a normal part of grieving and change process, right? These things are happening and they're outside of your control. So yeah, there are certainly counseling can help with some of those things. And getting support, I think, and understanding and information can help with those things. I have another question from Linda. What do I say to people who notice my husband's physical symptoms, tremors, slow gait, frozen face, when they keep asking me what's wrong with him? It makes him very self-conscious Few of the family members and friends really understand anything about PD, and somehow they believe his symptoms can be cured by medication. So I think she's looking at like how, has anybody had an example of that where they had to cope with people commenting out loud or sort of having a conversation in a place that's not, made it uncomfortable for you? Anybody?
I've not experienced anyone specifically saying that to us, but one of the things that I've noticed Angela will say at times herself, she said, you know, I have Parkinson's. So she's open and upfront with it. I have Parkinson's. And then it's, oh, okay, and then move on. Yeah. And I think I would encourage that to, you know, don't share, you know, you have Parkinson's, okay, then let's move on. Life is life, and you've got your own life to live, and we all struggle with something. In Angela's case, she has Parkinson's, but don't let it be the driver. Don't let it, you know, put it down. It shouldn't be a stigma or anything like that you should need to cope with.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understood the question, but I would just say George had no problem telling people he had Parkinson's. You know, it just, you know, other people have other health issues, sort of.
Right.
And so he just never hesitated to tell people, and it was just out there.
Yeah.
You know?
I think somehow people sometimes feel like they, you know, people are asking for an explanation, and really, we're not really required to provide any. Yeah, like living in the moment, right?
Yeah,
You need to apologize for what's going on for you. But I think being upfront about it has a way of, it's kind of like getting ahead of things and just sort of saying this is what it is and not offering any more explanations. Right?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, people want information. It's good to say there's lots of places you can go get information about that. Like Parkinson Society, right? It's easy to redirect that and not feel like it's your responsibility to educate the public. One of the tasks that you don't need to take on as a caregiver. Not responsible for the whole world. Another. Oh, so many questions today. Okay, that's great. I think we've got a couple comments for Terry-Lynn, but I think we'll maybe take that part offline. Another person that's overwhelmed by, it sounds like a little bit overwhelmed by caregiving for somebody with Parkinson's and somebody with Alzheimer's and his or her own health issues. So how would one balance that when there's sort of multiple things going on in your family? Has anybody had to encounter that?
So what was the question again?
It's a kind of a comment on a question. It sounds like this person has been struggling with a partner with dementia, Parkinson's, with some other things. And yeah, it's not like an easy question to answer. Oh, here at the bottom. Has anybody tried sleeping pills to sleep at night or found something else that helped when they were struggling with sleep?
Is that for the care partner or for the?
Not clear. It doesn't say, the question doesn't say whether it's for the person or the care partner.
Yeah.
Has anybody, as a care partner, has anybody had trouble sleeping?
Yeah, I would say
okay.
I've used melatonin, a very small amount. And that's from a doctor I used to work with well before Parkinson's. She said, always keep a little half of a 3 milligram tablet at the side of your bed pad in case you have trouble sleeping. Just pop it in and away you go. So that just was one of the things. And certainly George was recommended to use melatonin as well. It's, you know, it's an across the counter. I don't know if it has any dangers, but yeah.
I use
There we go.
Oh.
And it's from the Vitamin Shop, which is in Victoria, and they deliver very quickly. And so, and it's all natural. So I'm not groggy. If my mom calls me 7 times in the middle of the night, I can still answer if I want to. And so, and this is, I love it. It's just I don't know what it is. It could, I don't know, but it works for me. So that's what I use.
I think I think people have their own strategy. I think probably sleep hygiene must be getting some sleep, and also trying not to worry too much if you have a sleepless night every now and again, and know that it's pretty common, right? Not getting into sort of a kind of a routine of not sleeping, right? If you can avoid.
Yeah, I can comment on the sleep part. So Angela and I have never really tried any sleep aids to help us sleep there, but I know I see with Angela living with Parkinson's, sleep is a challenge for her, and some nights she'll have a good night's sleep, and then she'll have 2 or 3 nights which are very poor sleep nights. And so, but there's no plan now, but we understand that as being part of living with Parkinson's.
Yeah, I think a change in the sleep pattern for the person with Parkinson's can profoundly affect their symptoms the following day. I mean, they hear that quite a bit. Yeah. So many good insights today. I know we're sort of coming up to the end of our hour. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time to post them. If you could keep them a little bit concise, that would be great. It would be really helpful for me. But yeah, I really appreciate that sense that you guys have all brought out, which is to maintain that sense of independence, right? And autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think are so important, right? Yeah. And living for the present, like really doing those things that really are engaging, right? Having a life and not letting it limit you that way.
So true.
I would say the words we always used was called managing Parkinson's. You know, I think that was just managing what the issues were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also heard a lot about adapting, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Sort of looking at it, going, this is like a challenge. You know, this is a challenge to adapt to, and this is how we're going to do it.
Exactly.
And openly communicating about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And adding to that, make sure you try and find. I think Pat talked about it quite a bit, and some Angela and I do. Find something that's mutual. Well, actually, Terry-Lynn, you said that with your mom. So I think we're all on the same boat. Try and find something that we can do together. The more you can do together, it's mutual encouragement for each other, and again, it gets you to do something. Whether it's going for a walk, whether it's playing a game, do things together. Make sure you're focused on this as a team, because you are a team, and the more you can support and encourage each other, the better you will do. And one of the things I've learned as well is that the more I can encourage Angela, if she has a quiet day, wants to sit down, just to try and motivate her to go for a walk or do something, because the more she does that, the better she will be as well, and it'll help her with her Parkinson's. But we're a team together. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
I just have a question, Madelaine. So if I put in the comments here in the questions, so if someone did want to get a hold of one of us, and that was okay, like for me, for example, I would be fine with someone having my email address. How do we make connection now with some people that are asking questions?
That's a great question. So Parkinson Society BC has a buddy system, right? So we can't just hand out emails to anybody, but you can connect up and actually be paired or matched up with somebody through Parkinson Society BC. Okay. So yeah, I would just call us or email. And then you can join if you're wanting to mentor somebody or you're available for that, then you sign up to be a buddy.
Yeah.
Alana can probably tell us a lot more about that system, or Pat maybe.
Yeah, I just looked at the chat, and I guess the question Pat mentioned about night care and what care do they provide and when is that necessary? I don't know if you want to bring that up, but that was the part that became very difficult for me with both the urine changes and the early dementia of Parkinson's and stuff. So that I could not find the right thing that my husband would accept. let me put it that way. So that was the biggest challenge. So I think there is some place that says they can have people who can stay in overnight and such, but I don't know that that would work for everybody. Let me put it that way. So, yeah. So I just saw that my name on that one, so I thought I should answer.
Thanks, Pat. Oh, I have another question from Denise. Sorry, it's addressed to anybody. Do you find it's a good idea for those with Parkinson's to meet others with Parkinson's when they may be at different stages?
I would say definitely yes. In our Parkinson's support group, we have a really big range. And I think that that is not a negative thing at all.
Agreed.
And it is a case when you see somebody who's managing long-term with difficulty, the people with new diagnosis actually respect how well that person has done, and maybe even see that that exercise, activity, socialization is part of it. So I think it's a motivator.
Yeah.
Good point. That's an excellent point. Okay. I think we've got everybody's questions. Did anybody else see? Sorry, it looks like we have all of our questions answered. I don't see any more in the chat. Thank you. I just want to take a minute. I know we've got like 2 minutes left to say thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights on what it's like to be a care partner. And the great advice for other people that are on the same journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kudos. It's been really great to have you all. Any parting words? Should be your words, not mine, I think.
I think it's amazing what the Parkinson Society BC does for all people, those with Parkinson's, those who are care partners, and it's just amazing. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that as well and say that, you know, please, if you're not using a lot of the services that are there, use them. They're great. I know Angela's done quite a lot of the online exercise, you know, in different forms, and I've joined in with her as well. It's so helpful, and so yeah, the Parkinson Society offers such a breadth of education, information, and I go back to the word exercise. That is so. It's one of the things I've learned so much as a care partner, and seeing Angela. The more not workouts per se, but you know, movement, exercise. Rock steady boxing. We've done some drumming. You know, there's the exercise class. There's all sorts of different things. Get involved with them and do as much as you can there. That's where do it together. And thank you for having me, and hopefully we've been of some help today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Have a great day, everybody. And
yeah. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye.